LEGO Builder's Journey is a charming little game that many people may have missed. I don't usually like LEGO games, but this one caught my eye. It's not your typical LEGO game.
Most people probably have never heard of this game, and the ones that had heard of it probably just wrote it off as just your typical children's LEGO game. However, this does look like it's the LEGO game that is going to check all the boxes for the LEGO lovers across multiple generations.
Builder's Journey is a wonderful hidden gem amongst the other releases of 2019. It delivers an experience much closer to LEGO's roots compared to the licensed titles we seem to get on an annual cadence. The game strips away much of the clutter, and instead the design choices made create for a much more atmospheric playthrough, all the while sparking your imagination. It's a delightful evolution on the classic LEGO formula we have grown to love.
The presentation of this game is stunning. Every aspect is top-notch and contributes to the experience of this, wait for it, journey. Trust me on this. To do this game justice, you need to remove all distractions and take in everything at once. And when you do, my God, the graphics will blow you away. I have never seen more realistic materials in my life. This game is the new bar for visual fidelity and realism. Who'd have thought it would be a LEGO game? And before you ask, yes, I've played Cyberpunk 2077, max settings, including ray tracing. That game wishes it looked as real as this. When ray tracing is turned on in the PC version, the light bounces off of and through objects so convincingly that you might think to yourself, are video games allowed to look this good? Even in the absence of ray tracing, it looks nearly just as real. Every time I turned this game on, I was impressed all over again.
So at first glance, I really thought that this game was going to look a lot like the other LEGO games that we'd been introduced in the past. I thought the menu was going to look cool, but when you really got into the nitty gritty, it was going to look a lot like the other games. I was completely wrong. The game looks amazing. The way that they've made the colors pop, which, coming from me, the colorblind guy, is a huge compliment, to the way the environments that they've built in terms of the puzzles actually look like you could build those in real life. It's just stunning. I was blown away with how good this game looks.
Are you looking for an immersive experience? Do you want to feel the LEGO? Feel it down in your plums. The bricks just bouncing right off of them. Real nice. Then I recommend playing this as a way to wind down later in the evening, grabbing a pair of headphones, getting comfy on the couch, and being immersed in the bricks adventure. The bigger the TV, the better. At its core, the design philosophy is all about restraint. By approaching it with a less is more methodology, the game is able to focus more on its key components. So for instance, while the game lacks flashy textures, it makes up for it with how smooth the colors look across each brick, or how the lighting is used to give the game a hyper-realistic look. This approach is also taken with the soundtrack, which mainly consists of minimalistic piano melodies. The mood of the music, along with the visuals, give the game a pure and joyful characteristic. Elements of restraint and zen carry to all facets of the game, including its UI, which is essentially non-existent. From the simplistic title screen, you're dropped straight into the game without the need for any convoluted menus and options other than the ability to pause. All of these components gel together really well and give the game a holistic coat of paint.
I loved the gameplay. Enough said. But no, really, there's no complex mechanics, no opportunities for the game to get glitchy. Everything does exactly what it's supposed to do in the way you would think it would do it. When the whole point of the game is to build a way to get from point A to point B, there's really no reason to overcomplicate it, and they didn't. And they nailed it. The gameplay feels great.
If you've built Legos before, this will feel very intuitive. The name of the game is picking up the correct bricks and placing them in the needed spots. It's all very simple and straightforward. My one gripe with the game was the occasional repetitive puzzle. There were sections where it was required to repeat the same puzzle 5 to 6 times back to back. And it happened often enough to the point where it just felt like it was padding out the playtime. Otherwise, the overall gameplay feels rewarding as you help your character traverse the various environments in unique ways. There were even moments where I was pleasantly surprised as bricks were used in new ways I haven't seen before.
Gameplay is just right. The subtle ways that it tells you where you are and aren't allowed to place bricks is the perfect amount of instruction. There are parts where the game presents its gentle challenge to you. Nothing too rough, just enough to get your noggin thinking. I never felt as though I was working to solve a tough puzzle. I always felt like the solution was a couple of brick moves away. But I do have to say, at least on the PC version, there were some massive stutters where the game just basically froze for like 10 seconds and then the level would continue, but other than that, nothing bad.
Much like the rest of the game, the story is presented in a very simplistic manner. There is no dialogue or high-budget visual effects. The story is essentially told through the characters' movements and how those movements express certain ideas and emotions. It leaves a lot of room for the player to narrate their own interpretation of the interactions happening on screen. The comparison I would give here is that of reading a children's picture book. The images give you a general idea of the narrative, and it's up to you to fill in the blanks however you want. To sum it all up, the design choices made with the story elements, as with the rest of the game, are all meant to spur the imagination, and it's all done tastefully.
So my take was that the game had zero story. There was really no setup whatsoever, and kind of like Massive said, you kind of just wrote out the story in your head. It was your story. Now, while that kind of sounds like a negative, I in no way mean it that way. I don't know if it was intentional at all, but the whole write your own story 100% reminded me of when I was a kid playing with Legos, or what I see when I'm watching my son play with his Legos. This completely goes in line with the whole mantra of what it's supposed to be like playing with Legos, and I think it's a huge win.
I got a little bit of a different take on the story. I do think there's a baseline story. Maybe you fill in some of the gaps here and there about the little interactions and what each of the characters are specifically doing, but there is a story there that you can fill in the characters for, whether you think the child character is a boy or a girl, you think the parent's a man or a woman, whatever. Little things like that you could fill in. It's a classic story. What is there? We've all seen it before, as adults. It serves its purpose well enough to keep the game moving along. It's probably the least appealing part of the game, but it doesn't detract from the overall experience. As an adult, we all know how it's going to end, but I think the youngins will enjoy it more than I did.
So the easy comparison would just cop out and say, oh, well, it's just like so-and-so Lego game. But in my opinion, that doesn't really compare with the other Lego games that we've played in the past, and to do so wouldn't really do this game justice. Now, if I had to compare this to a game, I would definitely say it reminds me of Limbo. And yes, before anyone says, oh, Limbo has nothing to do with building, and yeah, I get that, but hear me out. While the overall ambiance of both games couldn't be farther apart, they both prove that you can make a game that both looks great, plays great, and do it all without all the flashy mechanics and the whole kit and caboodle. They both kill it when it comes to having a game that just makes you want to keep playing while being super simple. Now, sidebar, I recently started playing Death's Door, which is another game that seems very simplistic and the graphics aren't insane, but it's another one of those games that's like, okay, yeah, it's pretty simple, but I really kind of want to see where this goes, and you want to keep playing.
Builder's Journey feels right along the lines of something like Fez for me. Both games apply a simplistic approach to their design while delivering an engaging puzzle experience. The similarities also extend to the overall mood of both. Each game utilizes its music and visuals to evoke a sense of wonder and delight. If you're looking for a slightly more challenging puzzle game, I would recommend checking out Fez as well.
The closest game that I've played that's akin to this would be a puzzle/experience game called Numa. Another one that I wouldn't have gone for normally, but it was a free Games with Gold title at some point. But it was a game based around a beautiful world that you explore and solve puzzles in. To be honest, I probably prefer Numa over this game. While I really enjoyed Builder's Journey, and it's a fantastic experience, I think the puzzles were a bit too easy. For sure, the graphics in Builder's Journey are better. Again, the pieces actually look real, but it was clearly aimed to be a game friendly to all ages, including kids, which makes it a bit too easy for us adults.
I love this representation of LEGO in digital form, and I hope Lightbrick Studio continues to evolve on the Builder's Journey formula with a sequel. Take out the things that weren't working so well, like some of the more repetitive puzzles, while also expanding on the core experience, giving enough to the player to warrant more than just a quick 2 to 4 hours of game time as it was with this release. I like to see things like larger and more complex map tiles, more characters with unique attributes to each, difficulty settings, a new game plus, and some sort of co-op, just to name a few. I very much look forward to what comes next from this team and the IP.
I originally snagged this game for my son to play. He loves to play with Lego, and I figured that, we'll put the two together, and the game in and of itself would be a good introduction into gaming. Very quickly into the gameplay, I realized that I kind of wanted to play the game just as much as he did. It's a fun game to play, simple as that. And to echo Massive, I would love to see a sequel alongside some bigger environments, maybe some more complex puzzles.
I think at its original full price of $20, it's already worth it to play it if you like what you see here in this video. If it's on sale at any point, just frickin' buy it already. It's not a huge time commitment, and it's flat out good, no matter your age.
And there you have it, another triple review for your viewing pleasure. Catch us in the next one as we dive back into the Destiny universe to review The Witch Queen. Judging from the information trickling in before launch, this looks to be a spicy one. Until then, get immersed in the bricks and become the builder you were born to be.